Hey guys, Buildzoid here, and this is going to be a bonus video for the patrons, probably only because I'm fucking sick and tired of this here motherboard. So this, of course, is the Maximus XI Gene, and I've been messing with overclocking on this thing for the, basically since the LN2 session on the Z390 Dark. After, I did that, I was like, well, the Dark needs to dry, so we're going to go test this board, right? This should be great. It's an extreme overclocking motherboard from Asus, except it wasn't fucking great. That's what it wasn't. So, most of the issues that I have with this well, actually, there's so many issues with this motherboard, but, basically, let's just look at these lovely charts here. So, I'm just going through my testing, trying to get all of my testing done here to fill all of these, well, fill these out, okay? Basically, that's the goal. Try to fill those out. And it sucks. And the main reason why it sucks is, oops, I'm destroying my beautiful charts. I mean, they're not beautiful, but get the idea. Oh, we can't zoom in using control. That's stupid. Is that right there. This is the problem with the Maximus XI Gene. And you may be wondering, Buildzoid, as well as the laggy BIOS, but that's more just like minor grating on my nerves. No. The big problem with this motherboard is, like most Asus motherboards, if you do the same thing over and over and over and over again, you get completely different results. And it's just so frustrating. Because it's like, here's the thing, okay? For example, for Geekbench 3, right? For Geekbench 3 benchmarking, and I need to zoom out again. So for Geekbench 3 benchmarking, the way you go for Geekbench 3 high scores is you essentially try to maximize your memory bandwidth. And the best way to maximize memory bandwidth is to just throw a whole bunch of frequency at it and then try pull the timings down as low as you can. There is like a point of diminishing returns where the frequency is so high that you can't really fix the issues with timings. But anyway, so it's like, so for the Dark and for the Z390i Gaming Edge AC, I was running the same settings, mostly because I pretty much, this was the first time I ran the Dark, and I hadn't put that much effort into those results over there. So, for all I know, I might be able to fine-tune this a bit more. But on the little MSI Z390i Gaming Edge AC motherboard, you just whack that in there, bam, works immediately off the bat. And that board is $155 US. The Gene is not really sold in the US, but it's like $300 to $400, and in the UK it's like 300 something quid. So it's a pretty expensive motherboard. It's like twice the fucking price of the MSI Z390i Gaming Edge AC. That thing's ITX. It's not meant for extreme overclocking. It just so happens to not suck at memory. But anyway, so on the Gene, I'm trying to do, I'm trying to hit the same frequency as the Dark, because I'm like, it could probably do that. It should do that, right? Like, the fucking little MSI board can do that. The reason why that's blank right there is because I haven't fucking gotten to that speed. No, the best speed I managed to get on the Gene so far was like 4666 at CL15. And, I get my 4666 CL15 running, I get into Windows, I run my Geekbench, I'm like, cool, so let's see if we can go any faster. I restart, the board fails to motherfucking train. I didn't do anything, I restarted the goddamn computer. How can you not train the same fucking settings you just ran Geekbench at? What is fucking wrong with you? Right? That's what I mean by inconsistency. It reminds me of the Rampage 5 Extreme, a motherboard I hate so much that I basically don't talk about it on the main channel. I just try to not mention it, because the thing is, the Rampage 5 Extreme is it's the Asus motherboard experience when trying to push hard memory settings for benchmarking purposes. Because Asus is going to be like, oh, but daily settings are fine. Fuck your daily settings. It's a fucking $300 goddamn extreme overclocking board. I need to be able to run benchmarks at settings that don't fucking suck, and I don't need to and I want to not have to rely on the retry button. That's the thing. Asus has a retry button. The Z390 Dark does not have a retry button, and there was a few moments with the Dark where I was like, I wish I had a retry. I've smashed this retry button on this board probably more times than I've restarted the Dark. Okay? That is not okay. because the fucking thing doesn't consistently train at the same settings. So anyway, it reminds me of the Rampage 5 Extreme, where on the Rampage 5 Extreme, if you were pushing hard enough memory settings, right, essentially you could restart the motherboard a whole bunch of times, and you'd get completely different results. 25% of the time, the board would boot, and everything would be working as expected, right? So everything would work the way you wanted to. 25% of the time, it wouldn't boot at all, because fuck you. And then, well, actually, the not booting at all, that's not quite as bad as what it does the other times. The next 25% of the time, it would post, and it would get into Windows, but it would drop a memory channel. So instead of running on glorious quad channel, you know, X99's glorious quad channel memory, you'd be on triple channel. And you didn't have to do anything. If you just kept restarting the board, that channel would just kind of come and go. Oh, and then the next 25% of the time, it would drop 2 channels. You know, because dropping 1 sometimes, not bad enough. We need to also sometimes drop 2 of your channels to cut your memory bandwidth in half. So that when you finally get into Windows and you run your fucking benchmark, your score is really, really low, and you're sitting there like, but I didn't change any settings. Why is the score different from last time? Oh, it's because the motherboard decided to drop half my memory. Well, mainstream Intel platforms don't tend to drop memory channels, which is kind of nice. It makes it much harder for Asus to screw up their fucking motherboard. But hey, they can still do it, because instead of having a 25, 25, 25, 25% split between a couple of different annoying options, one of which is, well, you know, couple annoying options, you can have a 25 to 75 split on will it even fucking post? Because fuck you, right? Like, it's just like, that's the thing, is like the retry button on Asus motherboards is not a neat feature to make your overclocking life easier. It's the only way to make our motherboards not fucking suck at memory overclocking, because you're going to be hitting that button so goddamn much. Okay? Like, and the thing is, the Maximus 9 Apex for me was the same fucking thing. It was like, look, if you didn't set exactly the right timings at exactly the right voltages, the board wouldn't be able to do 4000 CL12 on my memory kit at all. And when you did dial in the settings perfectly, you'd have to hit the retry button anything like, you know, 4 to 10 times before it actually made it into Windows. And when you made it in the finally made it into Windows, you'd check your you'd fucking run your benchmark, and it would just crash because it missed some, you know, memory training procedure. So you'd have to retry again, and then the next time maybe it'll actually finish the fucking benchmark. And it's just like, what? Fuck! But the thing is, this board right here is even worse. Because where the Apex was just like, okay, that's annoying, typical Asus motherboard behavior, it's just annoying. This doesn't fucking get better, because they've just gone ahead and made the things even worse. Because there's nothing redeeming about this motherboard, because I'd like to be willing to tolerate the obnoxious memory. Well, actually, no, I wouldn't be willing to tolerate. Like, using this motherboard actively makes me like the dark more and more. Like, when I went from the dark back to this board, because before I had the dark, I actually spent quite a bit of time on this board, and I'm so glad I forgot what the experience with this board before I had the dark was like. But anyway, now I'm fully reminded, and that's why we have this lovely video here. So no, after using the dark, you know, I was like, oh, the dark's not that, you know, incredible. How much, like, you know, basically my expectations were pretty good for this motherboard. I wasn't really in love with the Z390 Dark. If before using this, if you ask me like, hey, Apex versus Dark, I'd tell you, oh, it really depends. And I might be a bit biased in favor of the Dark. At this point, it's just like, fuck this, fuck Asus motherboards, buy a Dark. The Dark doesn't need a retry button. This needs a retry button. On the Dark, you sometimes might have to hit the power switch on the like, you might have to flick your power supply on and off every, you know, so often. This, you have to mash that retry button to do the most basic of fucking memory settings, because Asus can't fix their own memory training routines or something. Anyway, so it's inconsistent as hell, and that's generally why I find this motherboard so frustrating. And then it has no redeeming features. Okay, well, I mean, the voltage regulator is is nice. It has a nice VRM on it. Okay, like that's definitely not a bad thing. I'm relatively a fan of the fact that it's a MATX board instead of a, you know, EATX monstrosity. At the same time, I am kind of like at the same time, EATX monstrosities that support quad GPU configurations, I'm a big fan of. So, you know, it's like, but I do think that, like, it's nice that we have a extreme overclocking motherboard in this form factor. I think that's nice. So I'd like to like this board. I really would, because there's like, I like the voltage rate. Like the VRM is a really solid 5-phase. We've got the 2 DIMM slot, right? We got the 1 DIMM per channel configuration. We have a new output filtering section on the memory VRM. We got all the buttons, the switches, the postcode, everything you'd need. But there's no dual BIOS. Yeah, it's a $300+ motherboard, no dual BIOS. BIOS chips cost fucking nothing in the grand scheme of things. And fuck you. You don't get dual BIOS. And the thing is, I'd actually really like to have dual BIOS, because if I had dual BIOS, it would be really easy to, like, it would be much more convenient to go and test a bunch of different BIOSes to see if it's just this BIOS that's completely fucked, or if it's all of them, which it probably is all of them. Incidentally, when I first got this motherboard, it had no support for A2 layout memory sticks. Like, it literally didn't, like, it barely fucking ran those things. Like, at all. Like, you could forget about doing anything lower than, like, CL17 above 4,000 megahertz. Just impossible, because Asus does, apparently, Asus never saw an A2 layout memory stick, even though those things have been available since, like, 2016. And they never bothered to test one, because I guess everybody who's sponsored by Asus uses A1 memory sticks anyway, so that they don't need to put support for A2 memory. A2 memory is for plebs, like me. But the thing is, this is a $300 motherboard. As far as I'm concerned, it has no business not supporting a fucking memory DIMM. Anyway, it also, like, this. See this? That's the voltage read points. We all know how much I like to complain about motherboards that put postcodes on the bottom edge and other, you know, useful features on the bottom edge. But the fucking voltage read points? Like, here's the thing. If you put a postcode on the bottom edge of a motherboard, it's annoying to look at the postcode because there's a GPU in the way. But these are fucking voltage read points. Like, this isn't about looking at the fucking things. I need to get some probes in them. There's a motherfucking GPU, guys. How the fuck am I gonna get my probes into the goddamn probe points which you put under the fucking PCIe slot? And more importantly, there's only one PCIe slot. Like, I hate this board. I absolutely fucking hate this board. There's not a single thing that makes me like this motherboard. Because the other thing is just like the BIOS, like, yes, Asus BIOS layout is nice, it's beginner friendly, but the fucking thing is, it's animated and laggy as shit. Instead of just like scrolling through your settings a lot of the time, the fucking setting you have selected is not even displayed on the screen because the screen updates slower than you can scroll. Right? Like, Gigabyte BIOSes don't have that issue. Mostly because Gigabyte BIOSes are a horrible mess, and they didn't really bother to, like, nobody put any thought into, like, you know, aesthetic when designing a Gigabyte BIOS. It's just kind of like, we need to throw some settings on there. But then there's this thing. It's not even consistent. Like, it's just, BIOS is laggy. Also, Asus is so very good at memory training that for some reason, if you set 1T command rate, this board takes several seconds longer to post than every other board I own. Can't explain that. EVGA, who are like a tiny little freaking motherboard manufacturer compared to Asus, they figured out how to make 1T not train for a month. MSI, who don't have an extreme overclocking division basically at all, they have 1T training like that. Admittedly, well, actually no, Asus doesn't even really have a massive speed advantage in that department. And settings of 4000 CL12, you know, that, like, there at that point you're using like a different memory training procedure, and that post takes forever to post as well. So I don't really count that. Like, I'm saying if you're just running normal, like, normie timings, 1T, you know, you're not trying to do any extreme benchmarking settings, this still fucking posts forever. And the MSI board doesn't, and the EVGA board doesn't, and Gigabyte boards don't do 1T at high frequency kind of at all, but they don't take forever at the like this takes forever already at like 3466. It just sits on the F4F postcode for like several seconds because and so there's just like, I want to like this motherboard. Like, as I said, the VRM, we have a nice, big, beefy 5-phase V-Core VRM. You know, it has the upgraded voltage monitoring. It has all of the buttons. It has all of the postcode. But the voltage read points are in the wrong fucking place. The BIOS is single. It's single BIOS because BIOS chips cost money, Buildzoid. We can't have those on a $300. We can't have two of them on a $300 board. It's just so frustrating. And then most importantly, the inconsistency. Like, the inconsistency is just something that fucking kills me. Like, I want to be able to go on a motherboard and change a bunch of settings without being scared of if it's even gonna post anymore and if I'm gonna have to retrain, or if maybe the last time I posted these settings it was a random fucking fluke and it's never gonna do that again. Right? Like, on the dark, you throw a bunch of settings in there and, like, they work. Right? I'm never second guessing myself with the dark, whereas with this thing, I'm scared that I'm doing something wrong all the time, and then I'll trigger the board. Because the thing is like, this thing has some fucked up memory training procedure where, like, for example, 3866 megahertz on dual rank memory, right? So that's a 32 gig config of Samsung BDI. So 3866 megahertz on 32 gigs of BDI is only possible to train if you have 1919 primaries. If you run 1921, doesn't post. If you run 1719, doesn't post. 1819 doesn't post. 1920 doesn't post. 1919 works. Why? Fuck you, that's why. Oh, and the mini ITX MSI board just does a higher dual rank frequency than this can ever dream about. Like, seriously, like, I don't know what the fuck I'm paying for. So, yeah, this board basically makes me want to throw it out the window. It's like, it's on par with, it's kind of like me, well, no, it's like, I have some ASRock boards where I'm like, oh, this is acceptable. And then there's this fucking thing, which is just like, oh yeah, the Asus standard of hit retry until you're elite overclocker. Have I hit the button enough times yet? Have I? Oh, look, shit, we're in Windows. We have settings that fucking work at last. It only took me, it only required me to get repetitive stress injury. Fucking bored. Anyway, I think at this point I've made my point quite clear, right? This right here, which I don't know why that says 3800, that really should be 3866. This took forever to do. That is sketchy as fuck. That was actually easy. At low speeds the board behaves like kind of controlled. That that's only there because I know other people have done that, not because I've done that. It's just like, which the same goes for the dark. I don't have good enough memory. We will eventually do that. I'm not sure we'll actually be able to do it at 1T though, because, well, in the past I wasn't able to do it at 1T, but that was on my 8086K, and I suspect my 8086K's memory controller is trash. So we shall see how that goes, but there's a good chance that that is not going to make me happy. Also, did you know Asus has a really fucked up tertiary timing layout? Like, instead of being like normal motherboard vendors and putting the same tertiary, because like normally the tertiaries are organized like the timing, and then it's like same group, different rank, different DIM. Okay, so you have like all four of these, like there's 4 subtypes for each timing, and they'll put them together. Well, Asus has them, first they go same group, and then they do same group, different timing, same group, different timing, same group, different, like they go through all the same group, different groups first, and then they go the dual, different rank, different DIM. It's not really that big a deal, but at this point I'm just nitpicking because I fucking hate this board. Anyway, so yeah, and then we don't have a Geekbench 3 score because it ran 4666. The CL15 once. The score sucked also. Like, the score wasn't even good, so it was just like, well, shit. At least that worked for like a whole 5 seconds, because then I restarted the motherboard, and I couldn't get those settings to post ever again. And that's basically when I decided to give up. The voltage is like, oh yeah, also voltage readings in the BIOS are just completely fucked. Like they're off by like 30 millivolts. So like this right here, the board is like the board runs the voltage you set. It just doesn't measure the voltage you set because I don't know. vCore should be fine, but like in BIOS voltage readings are just kind of a mess. The BIOS is laggy as shit. Like I just hate this board. We should just end this video at this point. So yes, that is my experience with the Maximus XI Gene. And I regret ever saying that I might run this on liquid nitrogen, because at this point I will sooner, like, well, I wouldn't sooner hang myself than run this on liquid nitrogen, but there's a lot of things I'd rather do than run this on liquid nitrogen. So, there. That's my verdict. And I'm sad that I'm actually saying this, because here's the thing, is like my first motherboard was a Rampage 4 Extreme. I love my Rampage 4 Extreme. Now at this point, it's like several years old and really quite abused. It behaves kind of like this lovely board right here, but this is a brand new DDR4 motherboard, and my Rampage 5 Extreme was a brand new DDR4 motherboard, and my Maximus 9 Apex, which, well, that board doesn't do good memory settings anymore, because I think it kind of died. But yeah, this board, infuriating. Actually, all of the DDR4 Asus boards are just like the thing is after working on an Asus motherboard, you go to an EVGA board or an MSI board, and it's just like, and you see the board do things where it's like, I never knew it could have been this easy. Right? And it's like, fuck this board. Anyway, that's the end of the video. Hopefully it was somewhat entertaining, maybe somewhat informational. I mean, educational. Or who cares? I can't even fucking English how angry I am right now. Well, I'm kind of getting over it at this point, but still. So, yeah, I'm going to clean off that 9900K, and I'm not touching this board for, like, at least another week, because my patience isn't fucking worth it. Like, it really, well, my nerves aren't worth it. So, yeah. Patron bonus video. Goodbye.